It was 20 years ago that the outcome of the last ITV franchise auction was decided. Now, before you turn around and ask me what on earth I'm on about, let me explain.
Over to Guildhall. Good luck all. Here we go. Take it, Master Control.
ITV is the second channel to broadcast in the UK. It was set up as a commercial rival to the BBC, but its structure was unique. Set up in the mid-50s into franchises, this allowed for competition to create programming for the national network. With the building of new transmitters and relays, the network started in 1955 in London, and by 1962 it was complete. Initially there were 14 regions, some of which were split into contracts which covered the weekdays and weekend transmission. In 1964 the commercial structure was shaken by the collapse of one of the companies, and by 1968 a new region was created out of the Yorkshire area, and another one by the merging of the Wales and Bristol area, and it completed what was now 15 regions in total. In 1968, HTV won the Wales and West franchise, LWT won the London weekend franchise, the only weekend franchise remaining after 1968, and Rediffusion and ABC merged to become Thames for the London weekday franchise. The old system of the franchises was based on programme quality and to an extent a track record, but this was also the case in two further rounds in 1974, where there was no change, but in 1981 there was. The westward area, which is the southwest of England, was beaten by TSW, and southern, which is the southeast of England, was beaten by TVS. So by 1991 the franchises had settled down into creating the most watched TV channel of the then four available on the terrestrial network. TVAM was the last franchise holder to come in 1983, as the company responsible for running a breakfast service. If political pressures had not come into play, the 1991 franchise round would have been pretty much the same affair of putting submissions in for the franchises based on programme ideas and a track record. This of course wasn't the case due to the fact the Prime Minister at the time of the review of the ITV franchise process in the late 1980s was Margaret Thatcher. The 1980s were dominated by one person and her determination to drag the UK out of the old union-based state industries into a commercial powerhouse that would be the envy of the world. Each industry would be modernised and the trade unions would have their power severely restricted. This was a reaction to the fact that the 1970s in the UK was crippled by wildcat union strikes culminating in the winter of discontent of 1978-1979. The TV industry was not immune, and in 1979 ITV was forced off the air for nearly 2 months due to industry union striking. When Thatcher came in 1979, it was a raison d'etre to ensure that the unions were subdued and the rights of industry and commerce were maintained. By the late 1980s, ITV was one of the last such institutions where the change to more commercial free market ideal than the staid 1950s federal structure of the regions was fast becoming threatened by the rise of newer and more versatile ways of broadcasting. TVAM was the leader of this new world after its chairman Bruce Gingell had sacked all of its union staff after they striked in 1987. Another issue by the late 1980s was that even though ITV was the richest TV entity in the UK, its smaller regions were feeling the squeeze, while the larger ones were unable to buy other regions wholly out, as present legislation prevented them from doing so. They had started to look abroad into other business ventures though, TVS being the prime example. In my opinion, the 1990 Broadcasting Act should have merely allowed the ITV companies to buy each other out and the previous rules to stay, but as with British Airways, British Gas and British Telecom, the government sought to make some money out of ITV and the franchise auction was created. It was initially going to be a highest bidder takes all affair, but after a bodge of a quality threshold by the regulator, the ITC, who was newly created, to rule out any candidates whose business ideas or finances would severely affect programme production and quality. The auction process went as follows. Each company existing or new wanting to run a region would submit a business plan for the next 10 years. They would state how much they would be prepared to pay for the privilege of running the region, with a yearly contribution which went to the government before a single penny was spent on programming. This would not be disclosed at all to their competitors, so no one knew officially how much people were bidding. There was a lot of digging going on, as Greg Dyke once said, before the bids were submitted in early 1991. By this time, Scottish Television, Central Television and Border Television all realised that they were the only companies bidding in their regions and bid the minimal they could to retain their franchises. Grampian and Time Tees nearly lost their bids. Grampian as it was outbid but won it on the quality threshold, and Time Tees as it was initially seen that their bid, 3 times the amount of their rivals, was too high. In the end, only 4 companies of the incumbents lost when the results were announced on the 16th of November 1991. TSW lost on their business plan and quality threshold, and it was awarded to West Country Television. TSW subsequently took the decision to the High Court but lost. TVS lost its bid in a ridiculous £60 million bid a year to keep its franchise, so Meridian got it. TVAM was simply outbid by GMTV, or Sunrise as it was called at the time, as was Thames Television, the ITV big boy, by Carlton Television. The Broadcasting Act of 1990 also allowed ITV companies to buy each other, and by 2004 this had effectively played out. Carlton and Granada had every franchise in England and Wales between them, and merged into one company, ITV plc. Northern Ireland kept Ulster Television, or as they renamed themselves by then, UTV, and Scottish had bought Grampian in the late 1990s and was soon to become STV. Only Channel Television has truly stuck to the original principles of the Television Act of 1954 and is a truly regional company, until they were bought by ITV in November 2011. From 16 companies, there are now only 3. GMTV was bought by ITV in 2009, and that is the way it has stayed. So by noting this anniversary 20 years since the ITV Franchise Auction, I'm also noting the biggest change of the British TV industry before the digital switchover, and why today TV looks more uniform, more coherent than anything we knew 30 years ago. I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. See you later.
Show you the world where you live as you've never seen it. Spread your wings like a bird in the sky. We can fly and we'll really mean it. Everything that's beautiful is waiting
Life is a book, such a beautiful book, and it's waiting for you to read.